Hi, welcome to the second episode of our self management training series. I'm Angela Tran, part of Evo Skills, and this is a training series we've developed to share with the audience. So let's get started. So, in this episode, it is the second episode called Introduction to Self Awareness. If you missed the last one, it is on our channel in the playlist where we introduce the concept of self management. So you see that there will be several modules or episodes to come. So this is only second in the series. Just a bit of a disclaimer. So the information provided in this episode is for general informational purposes only and is not intended to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. By watching this episode or listening to it, you acknowledge that the creator is not liable for any actions taken based on the information provided. So, just as a recap from our last episode, we went over what is self management, and I'll do a bit of a review of our meta skills framework from Evo Skills. And we went over a couple of tools. First is meditation and how that can be used to help observe our inner state. And the third one is something called a chain analysis worksheet, which we have a free download available on our site to help us see and observe and break down our behaviors. So you'll see here that this is our meta skills framework where we focus on four core skills: self management, pattern recognition, organization, and storytelling. And right now, this series is focused on self management, which is our ability to manage thoughts and behaviors to promote self acceptance. And this is probably this main series that we will offer for free just because we think that this is a very important skill and it should be accessible to anyone. And this is another recap. So, on this image here is a chain analysis where I went over in the last episode. Remember, we are still working the skill of C, so being able to observe. And in this chain analysis, we're breaking it down between input into an internal process and output. So, for example, and then the event or situation occurs, that's the input to ourselves and our minds. And inside our minds, we'll interpret that with a thought, which leads to a feeling or emotion, which then drives our behaviors. And then, of course, an outcome will come of that. So I'll still touch on this today, but in a different context. So we also went over the levels of progression in this meta skills framework. So again, this is developed by us. There's four skills here. The first level is feel, second is see, three is do, and the fourth is to create. So in the context of self-management meta skill, the C, what we're working on and kind of presenting tools and sharing with you guys is something called focus on self awareness. So, the ability to objectively observe your internal self. Simply as that. Even though it sounds simple, it is actually rather difficult, at least from my experience, probably because nowhere in our education, or maybe in my education, it is there's a course or class dedicated to this, unless you had been taking that type of major in college. So we are continuing progressing through the skill of C for self management. So today's topics, we are focused on what is self awareness. So, what's the definition of it? Second, we're also going to focus on two different tools. I'll go over the levels of self awareness. I'll explain why I'm so focused on this or having a framework, just realizing that in our own, as we observe our inner self, there's actually different levels of how deep we can see. And I felt like if I had a framework to practice with or actually being able to overlay it, I could easier see what's happening. So I'll go over that. I'll also go over what are core beliefs. And then the last tool would be the downward arrow technique. So, topic one, our first topic, what is self awareness? So, I'm going to borrow a definition from helpfulprofessor.com. And they say here self awareness is the conscious knowledge of one's own character, feelings, motives, and desires. It is the ability to reflect on oneself and recognize patterns in one's thoughts, behaviors, and emotions. Through self awareness, individuals can understand their strengths, weaknesses, and that how they are perceived by others. So, I think when we talk about self awareness, most of the time you'll have a sense of a definition of it, but it's always nice to hear a definition and kind of describe what it is. Now, they have two types of self awareness here, internal and external. However, this training is really going to focus on, and the series, in fact, will be focused on internal self awareness. I always think it's a lot easier to see someone else behaviors and describe them than our own. So I think the skill we're trying to develop here is internal self awareness, which they define as this is the recognition and understanding of one's internal states, preferences, emotions, and thoughts. So just want to level set, and that's a baseline of what we think self awareness. To me, it's about being able to, if we did have a mirror, right, and able to kind of see and dissect our own kind of internal state in our mind, right? But in that we don't really have that. So this is where I think the challenge is. So if I go on to the next topic, it is levels of self awareness. So, what I think is interesting in self awareness is that we all have a sense of it, just as I mentioned before. But again, we're not really taught, are there levels of self awareness? I mean, this is one way of breaking it down. And in not doing so, I think that it's easy to say, and a lot of us, I would probably say that we are able to kind of go back in time and watch and describe what we did and possibly name the outcome that was not desirable, right? For example, I use the work example of if I was to stay quiet in a brainstorming session, right? And I might be able to go back and say, oh wait, why did I stay quiet when I had these ideas? Right. And observe that, oh, maybe I should contribute in the meeting next time. I should contribute because now, maybe my boss thinks I'm mm, not interested, right? Or I'm not outspoken enough, or I'm not, um, there could be missed opportunities, right? So here I did some research because I was very baffled by this. And to be quite frank, several of my colleagues in my career have said, "Oh, Angela, you're really self-aware." And I thought it was very interesting because probably because I didn't perceive myself that way. And I am very reflective, but I didn't think I was self-aware. And as I was kind of been thinking about why they said that and what makes someone self aware, and some research, this is what I've come up with. So it called an iceberg model and is adapted by, I found something that inspired me from Pathfinder's coach. And this is also used in iceberg model is also used in systems thinking, which is probably why it appeals to me, just given my data background. So if we imagine an iceberg, and usually just like an iceberg, the tip of it is above water and we can usually see that. And that is, what we describe if we overlay that into our minds, what happened in a scenario. So what reactions, how did we react? What were some of maybe the physiological responses? So in this example, in the scenario that I'm in this brainstorming meeting and I am nervous about speaking up because I'm in my own minds as I went over, my thought that comes to mind is that what if I'm wrong? My colleagues will think I'm stupid or dumb, right? And I can probably go back in time and realize that, okay, just by thinking that, not really knowing how they feel, I might get sweaty, right? My heart might palpitate. I might be just sitting there quietly and nervously trying to calm myself down. And we can usually observe this, right? If we go back and see it, because it's what happened really on the external side. Now, if we go under the water, there's three more levels, right? Under of this iceberg. So here I have the second level that's probably the easiest to see, right? It doesn't go too far down, or probably patterns, right? What repeated behavioral patterns can you identify? So for me, I might be saying that, oh, actually, I do this quite often, right? The next level might be able to see not only what I happened in this meeting or this brainstorming session, but hey, I noticed that I actually don't speak up in most meetings simply because I am really nervous about it. I am not confident in my sharing my own ideas, right? So now I'm identifying a repeated pattern, right? And now we're kind of a level deeper. Now, another level deeper underneath a pattern, it could be my thoughts, right? So, what recurring thoughts reinforces that pattern for me, and what emotions emerged? So, as I kind of alluded to earlier, in my head, I was thinking like, what if I'm wrong? What if they think I'm dumb, like I'm stupid for saying that, right? Now, in even having those thoughts, right? I don't know that that's fact, right? I am just saying, what if they think I'm dumb? I don't know if they'll think I'm dumb. Right now, it's interesting because our minds don't think like, oh, just by not saying anything, I don't go in a place to be like, oh, what if they think I don't care? Right? That might be a different kind of driver, right? I could in that scenario be thinking, one of my thoughts could be instead, what if they think I don't care? Maybe I should just speak up, right? So it's interesting how our thoughts can drive the action that we do. So that might be the recurring thought. And I start to notice, right, in these kind of pattern behaviors that I keep thinking that. Now, the final level and probably the hardest one is our core beliefs. Why do I think that they think I'm dumb? And so what if they do, right? So in this level, we're looking at what underlying belief supports my recurring thought. And this is a framework I would say I'm kind of testing with, but I still think it's valuable to kind of give someone the ability to break down kind of their inner thoughts a little bit deeper. Just another way, right? Another framework, just like that chain analysis. So let's take this and connect the dots a little bit from episode one and how does this look and how does it compare? Because you'll see it kind of repeated. And I think a lot of these techniques with self-management, as I've read and researched, they do overlap. So how I see it is that, hey, this is just a different tool. So this tool doesn't work for you, right? If you're picking, this, it just like tools in a toolbox, you're picking this screwdriver over this other screwdriver just because the handle might be bigger or the handle might be smaller. They both complete the task, right, in screwing in a screw, but they might fit your hand better. So see it as that way, right? This is just another tool to see our minds and how they work so that we can better um, have more, I don't want to say control, but actually more aware of what we're doing and then be able to have a bit more ways of managing our behaviors. So you'll see the same ideas, whether to share my ideas in a brainstorm meeting. This is a chain analysis, and the thought my idea might be incorrect or wrong, and the team might think my idea is stupid. So, which brings up feelings of fear, rejected, and shame is what I went over last time. And the behavior is no input provided. And the outcome becomes, it could be missed opportunity to help the team or potentially perceived as disinterested. In here. So let's overlay the two and kind of see the parallel, right? What happened in level one of self awareness? Most people, when asked, can usually describe the situation that occurred and the outcome of the event. So in here, I have the boxes situation and outcome highlighted, right? That's the same as that level one. What happened? Usually people can say, hey, this is what happened. This is what situation. This is what the input I was presented with. And this is the outcome after certain reactions I had in this encounter or this thought, right? Most people can name that. It also covers a bit of our behaviors, right? Like I didn't know input happened. So if I were to describe what happened to someone, I would be say like, hey, I was in a brainstorming meeting. I did not provide any input. And then my boss came to me and said like, Angela, why are you not participating? Right? Were you paying attention? Right? So that could be kind of level one. I can kind of kind of dissect that, right? Now we go a level deeper in level two, we're talking about patterns. So what repeated behavioral patterns can you identify, right? So in this example, overlaying on this chain analysis is that no input was provided. That is the behavior. And in fact, if I really think about it and start, analyzing it, maybe I do this more than just this one brainstorming meeting. Maybe I do it in, team meetings as well. In team meetings, I don't want to say anything because, again, I'm afraid of what I say and how I'm going to be perceived or I'm wrong, right? I'll be wrong. Therefore, they think I'm stupid. So that is the behavior crossover. I might not know my thoughts yet, but I know that that is the behavior. Actually, I realized I really don't speak of meetings at all. No matter what the meeting is, if it's more than, 3 people, right? 2 people, of course, in one-on-one, I would hope, we'd speak up, but in 3 or 4 people or more, I don't say anything. So then if we go down to level 3, what recurring thoughts reinforces your behavioral patterns and what emotions emerge? Now, you'll see kind of like the bolded boxes are thoughts. This is really what's covering. Feelings are results of our thoughts. So I would say, just like most people would say, feelings are never wrong. They're just an energy that gets produced after an event or your thought happens, right? So in this, just as I keep mentioning, as you can see, I mean, this is kind of a real example. Not that I do, I am more, I would say I am more comfortable in speaking and brainstorming in meetings in general, but definitely this is a real life situation in my own head, right? Um, so my recurring thought I might start to notice and start to kind of understand is that my idea might be incorrect or wrong, and therefore the team might think I'm dumb or not that smart, right? So that's kind of that third level of understanding. And it's interesting, right? Because if you're able to get down to this part, kind of thoughts, I think that's already really powerful, just even in level 3, because now we're recognizing, hey, there's these patterns, whether it's fact based or not. There's these repeated patterns of thoughts that I keep doing in multiple scenarios, right? So that should be, if you're able to kind of take a step back and think about it, it should mean that, hey, I have this pattern that keeps coming up no matter if it's remotely similar, right? So in these meetings with people, um, does that really make sense, right? You can kind of start to hopefully challenge your thoughts. You're like, okay, this is interesting. Um, why does, for example, in my case, like incorrect or wrong equals stupid? Maybe they don't think much of it, right? But in my head, that's what I'm thinking. So in this level 4, and this is where you don't see anything highlighted in this chain analysis, is because it goes down into our core beliefs. And I'll cover what core beliefs in the next kind of next topic. But that doesn't even show up. So whenever you're kind of doing, like I said, it's already very powerful and get down to the thoughts, but core belief is probably the hardest to see. Many a times, even if I'm going through these processes, I'm learning about self-management myself and applying on myself, it is really challenging to get down this because it's really, really well protected within our brain. Usually it's formed during our childhood. And if it formed during a time of pain occurred, then our brain is like, nope, we're not going there. We're just going to protect it as much as we can. So let's delve into core beliefs a little bit, right? So core beliefs are, like I said, deeply buried internal assumptions of how we view ourselves, others, and the world around us. And I really like this from therapistaid.com. These facts, we're talking about facts, right? These are, again, core beliefs are assumptions, but we believe them to be facts, is what's interesting in our head. So people are not born with core beliefs, they are learned, as I said. Core beliefs usually develop in childhood and during stressful or traumatic periods in adulthood. So we experience something really traumatic in adulthood, which is, of course, possible. Our core beliefs can shape again, but typically they're developed when we're really young. And at that young age, we probably don't even realize that we developed it. So information that contradicts core beliefs is often ignored, and negative core beliefs are not necessarily true, even if they feel true. And that's the tricky thing about our brains. These core beliefs are so wired in, we believe it to be true and we feel it's true, whether it's true or not, or truly a fact, doesn't really even matter. So core beliefs tend to be rigid and long-standing, however, they can be changed. So that's the good news, right? It's deep inside, but as I said, hard to access. All right, just even those thoughts I told you, what I had about, hey, people, and this is real. This is actually my own thoughts that oh my gosh, I don't want to speak up because I don't want to be wrong. Again, it goes back to, because people will perceive that I'm stupid. So wrong equals stupid in my own head somewhere, right? So let's walk through an example. So this is also from therapist.aid, and I really like their core beliefs are like a pair of sunglasses, but everyone can have a different shade, causing us to see the same situation differently. So let's pretend, and they give this example. You meet a new person and think about asking them to go out for coffee. So if my core belief internally was I'm not worthy, my thought comes to mind might be, why would they even go out with me? And doesn't even, so then therefore I will not even ask the person to go to coffee. Right? I'm not an inside internal, I'm not worthy. But to get to I'm not worthy is quite challenging, right? Because we'll recognize we might be able to get to our thought. Why would they even go out with me? Right. So let's take the flip side, the positive side. So if our core belief believes I am worthy, then my thought might be, oh, we might have fun if we go out together. Let me ask the person for coffee. Let me go and ask them. And if I am also believe that I am worthy, even if they say no, I probably won't be too impacted by that, right? Even if they rejected the offer, I'd be like, they might say really kindly, it's like, oh, not at this time. I'm busy. I have to go somewhere, right? We'd be like, okay, they're busy. I'll ask somebody else, right? Because I'm not perceiving that situation as something that is going to hurt me, right? It's going to make me feel unworthy, is what the perception is doing, and my thought that would go in through my mind. So super powerful, very difficult to see from a self-awareness perspective. I would say even for me personally to try to see it is I would say I'm still really working on it. But once we are able to see that, it is you will become more able to see and change kind of those any unhealthy behaviors or habits you want to kind of kick off. So I'm going to share another technique. So this technique is developed by David D. Burns. So how do we identify core beliefs, right? So David D. Burns found this in the 1990s, and it's based off of Socratic questioning. So you basically are asking questions to yourself, right? It is called a downward arrow technique, and we've developed a version of the worksheet. It's available for free on our site. When you and we'll paste the link below in this video. But it is, you can have a stab with, and actually I'm going to demo it to see how it works. But in this technique, it's basically you keep asking this repeated question until you start to repeat the same answers. And then that is likely that we've identified a core belief. So I'm going to demo that so that you guys can see how it works. Again, this is available for free. Okay, so this is the worksheet that we've developed, and just in case that it is helpful sometimes, and a lot of times people will say, hey, write things down. I'm very bad at this, so I totally understand if you're not ready to go and write it down. But I promise you, if you do, it is extremely powerful, because in the recent year or two, I've started to kind of do these worksheets and kind of try writing things down, and it's actually a lot more revealing. So identify a situation that brings up a negative emotion. So I'm going to go with the same example, right? That, we're in a brainstorming meeting, and I ended up not contributing. Not because I wasn't interesting, but because I had, so I want to preface this, I had ideas and wanted to share, but ended up not doing it. Not sharing. Okay. And the next kind of question is identify one negative thought you had while the situation was happening or immediately after it occurred. So in this, right, I mean, again, I'm going down these levels, and I had thought, as I said, I might be wrong. My idea might be wrong. And if I share it, a wrong idea, my colleagues will think I'm stupid, right? My colleagues, typing it in, my colleagues might think I'm not smart, right? Or I mean, in my real mind, and this is the hard part, when I'm writing, as I'm even writing this, it's very interesting. I didn't want to write stupid because I think it's a very hurtful term sometimes. And you'll see that's why I wrote not smart, and I ended up writing it because I'm trying to be honest with myself. So that tells me if I have and this is a good hint if you ever kind of write things down, is that if you pause or you hesitate in a word, usually that's something, an indication that there's more meaning to it, right? There's more, something deeper about it. So if that were true, what does it mean to you? So my idea might be wrong, and I share a wrong idea. My colleagues might think I'm not smart and stupid and stupid. So for me, I'm really asking myself, what does that mean? Right? What does that mean to me if it were true? Right? It means that they will not like me. Like in my head, I'm thinking that, right? It means they will not, if they think I'm stupid, they're not going to like me. They're not going to hang out, right? And they're not going to spend time with me, right? Or not going to, right? Okay, so if that were true, again, it's going to start to repeat. What does that mean to you? So if I say if it means that they will not like me, right? Now I'm going to like, they're not going to like me, and they're not going to spend time with me. So if they're not going to spend time with me, what happens? Um, I'll feel lonely, right? I'll feel lonely. I'll be and be alone, right? And then you ask again, right? If that were true, what does it mean to you? If I feel lonely and be alone, then I will not have anyone, and no one will like to spend time with me. So I type this in, right? So now at this time, I can kind of see some repeating themes occur, right, within my own head, and even the last three responses. If you guys can also see, right, that's the powerful thing about writing it down, because then I can activate my very analytical, data-driven brain and say, wait a minute, hold on, this is interesting. And to be quite frank, I didn't really plan. I'm really doing it as I'm asking myself. What I see the theme here is not going to spend time with me, right? Alone, lonely. Again, it repeats again, not no one will spend time with me. So, in these last three questions, that theme is emerging. So, I know I'm hitting kind of that somewhere in my core belief is that either I'm lonely or I'm an outsider, right? And nobody wants to be with me, kind of thing. So that's what we're trying to get to. That's what we're practicing to observe. Now, I won't tell you kind of how, because in this skill that we're practicing, like I said, is about seeing. So being able to observe. And I hope this example kind of gives you that, my real life example, right? Again, very, very powerful to see. So now I might be thinking like, oh, I probably wasn't aware, to be honest, that I thought I was an outsider. I wouldn't really describe myself that way, but it's interesting that core belief, how it spurs into different thoughts coming from it, right? Because really, the thought that I had from the situation is my colleagues might think I'm not smart, or I have the wrong idea and therefore the colleague thinks I'm not smart. So it's amazing how our brain kind of makes these connections. And that's why I say it's so difficult to see this last level. So that is the downward arrow technique. Now, this is pretty much concludes the the lessons I wanted to cover today. And like I said, I have a toolbox here, an image of a toolbox, and this is how I see kind of all these tools. It's just another way to help us solve our problems, right? To solve any problem, just like tools in a toolbox. And except this one is about self-management. So in here, I added meditation, chain analysis, downward arrow. So probably should add kind of levels of self-awareness. So again, to me, that's a framework for you to see, be able, power of observation is pretty amazing, because once we're able to see and see where the where the hiccups might be, then we can kind of target the solution, right? Because a lot of times I think we're problem solving without really identifying the root cause, right? And but how do you identify the root cause is the challenge. So that's where I think the power of this seeing that skill is about. So I would encourage you to practice, practice, practice. Again, this is available for free on our digital download page. So check out evo-skills.com and digital downloads, and you can download this worksheet and the worksheet from our last episode as well. And our next episode will be covering what I call the evolutionary brain. So far, we covered introduction to self-management, introduction to self-awareness, which is this episode. Next, I'm going to go into our evolutionary brain because I think it's very fascinating to understand how our minds evolved this way and how it drives a lot of probably how we form our core beliefs and how we form our mind. So another very fascinating topic. To me, again, it's another way of understanding how the mechanics work, which serves another way of seeing how our brain works as well. So I look forward to sharing that episode with you next week on Thursday. If you've liked this episode, please do subscribe to our channel. Give us a like, thumbs up, or give us a comment on what you think. Also, if you are interested in getting the images from the deck that I've shared, if you're just doing listen only, subscribe to our email newsletter. We'll attach the links to the downloads, but we'll also share the images I have and the diagrams that we've developed with you. So thank you for listening in if you're watching the recording or watching it live. And I hope to see you next week. Be sure to like, comments, love to